Being rich is you have the money, and being wealthy is you have the freedom. And so that freedom to pick up and go and do other things is kind of what drives me. It's all a perspective. I think we're all rich to some extent, but I think when you get wealthy, that's that next level. It's an energy, it's a focus, and it's your why. It's how do you get to that why? And I think that's what drives me too.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Investor Chat podcast. I have Chris Wahoski with me. Chris is a real estate investor and business developer. Chris has a really awesome story. He's done a lot of really cool stuff. And I am super excited to have you on, Chris, and I'm so excited to share your story. So thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start. Let's go back many years and let's start with your W-2 career. Let's start there, Chris.
Yeah, so I think we go back, probably 30 years plus. Went into the Air Force and started my career doing that and learning skills, right? So learning how to be in the electrical field and build tent cities and power plants, and then get a little bit into the HVAC and the mechanical side. They taught you to do a lot of stuff, right? So did a little bit of search and rescue. That led me into being a paramedic for the last 25 years. But during my 25 years of doing that, I also had time to mess around in the real estate world and kind of a little bit of handyman and learn things and tools of the trade, right? So that I knew kind of what I was talking about when I went in. I helped a lot of senior citizens fix their houses up, and they didn't have a lot of money, in which I had time. And then I got to learn a skill, and they would pay for the equipment or some hardware or something like that, right? And so that taught me also relationships and building those relationships. During that time as well, I've owned a few businesses. I've had some brick and mortar. I've had some educational. I've taught paramedics, thousands of paramedics. It's instructional. I've had those brick and mortars. That was one of the scariest things I did, right? I've operated these businesses as a sole entrepreneur, as a LLC, and I had to learn how to operate those businesses and then run them efficiently, right? So I've had my own magazine. I think I showed before we kind of started here, a bunch of different magazines I've run. And we messed around with that. So I learned about marketing. I learned about how to interview people. I learned how to build those relationships and build those longevity of skills, right? And so then applying those to the real estate world now and buying some of these businesses or looking at businesses to buy, this has really put a good tool belt on, if you might say, added tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, so that's awesome, Chris. It sounds like you have such a wide range of skills that you've been able to acquire over the years, right? So it's very obvious to me that you have been willing to learn continuously, right? You're not afraid to pick up something new. And I think a lot of times as you get into military type service, specifically with the Air Force and being able to go into these unique opportunities and these unique challenges, being able to be put into those hard places, right? That's probably got to be a very strong way to condition you into the business world and in investing. And so thinking through your time at the Air Force, are there lessons there that you are using today in your investing or in your business world? Even historically, as you've mentioned, you've had several different businesses. Are there lessons that you can tie back to your time at the Air Force?
For sure, for sure. Well, I think what it all comes down to is being able to adapt and overcome a situation, right? Being able to pivot as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as talking to people, right? How do you help them through a situation? How do you give them a solution? How do you solve that problem? I think those are some important aspects of running the operations, right? And so being able to do that, pick up a book, learn a lesson, heck, now everybody's got Google, right? So you can learn just about anything on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned being able to use YouTube, and I know I've used YouTube a lot of times for working on vehicles or, working on stuff around the house. And so being able to go back and look at different books and learn those things in a different medium. As you think back to some of those books, are there specific books that you feel are key in your growth, whether it's something technical or even a mindset? Are there books that you feel really helped move you forward in your investing career?
Yeah, I think there's a couple good books. I think Think and Grow Rich. That was a good book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The one I really liked was the Quadrants. How it taught you how to get out of that employee W-2 world, right? How do we get out of the rat race? So those two books right there, I thought were really powerful and put you in the mindset of, oh, I want to be an owner. I want to be I want to have freedom. I want to have financial security. I want to be able to have a legacy for my family, right? And provide. So I think those kind of like really stick out of my head. But I mean, a collection, I think we're a student of life, right? You have to always be adapting and overcoming situations. So the only way to do that is to educate ourselves. And some of it is self-education, and some of it is like, dealing with the community and just like this, right? Growing, having a team, building a team, and then growing together. Like, how do we navigate? How do we pivot? How do we get better? Like, how are we the best?
Yeah. So as you continue to grow and continue to educate yourself, continue to develop, what are some of the things that you've had to do along the way to pivot, right? Again, you talk about being able to adapt and overcome. Do you have a story or maybe a challenge that you would like to share that really showcases that adapt and overcome and how that has played into your investing career?
Well, I think learning and how to deal with tough situations. I've had business partners. Not all of them were good business partners, but you still had maybe formed a company, right? And then you had to navigate that company, how to talk to them, how to get them on board, how to them to be a team player.
Mhm.
So communication is one of the biggest things, I think, with anything that you're going to do. Whether it's a difficult seller, well, it's dealing with the bank, whether it is dealing with attorneys, or you're getting served papers, or you're trying to do a trade patent. Like, you have to have that good communication skills. You don't need to know everything, but you do have to surround yourself by the experts that, hey, I don't know the answer, but I know who I can get a hold of.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful to be able to recognize when you need that help. And as you've mentioned over the years, you've been able to learn and grow and adapt. Are there people along your way, along your journey, that you feel were just completely instrumental in taking you to that next level of whether it was partnering with a business partner? You said you've had some challenges with some business partners, but what are the traits that you're looking for when you're working with a partner or somebody that you want to do business with? Maybe talk through some of those core values or traits that you're looking for that other investors should be aware of, that they need to be either developing in themselves or looking for as well.
Well, I think you do need to realize, like, if you're a visionary or an integrator, like, what is your skill set, right? And then you focus on that skill set, and then you need to add somebody else in there.
Mhm.
I also I have one business partner, and he's a lifelong friend too, that, we always brainstorm, right? And we'll sit down, and there's no limits. Like, we might disagree on something,
Mhm.
but when we come to the table and talk about, like, how do we overcome this? Not necessarily disagreement between us, but like the opinion of how we're going to solve a solution. We brainstorm, right? We throw everything on the table. Nothing is, you got to
Nice.
be able to throw everything out there.
Yeah.
And then you like, okay, well, what if we tweaked it just a little bit and we did a combination of both of these strategies? Boy, I tell you what, that's just so powerful. I think, having those weekly meetings and brainstorming and things like that.
Yes. You mentioned about being able to throw anything out there, right? So, what does that look like? It sounds like you've developed this relationship and it provides you with a safe environment to be able to have these wild and crazy ideas. But is there a way that you guys work into that flow? Or is it just, I mean, it's something you've built over the years and so you've got that relationship, but is there a way that you maybe he pitches you with something or you pitch them with something? What brings that flow and brings you guys into that?
Yeah, so I think it's just really now we're just so fluid. It's just a conversation. It's like, hey, you know what? We got this to deal with. Let's brainstorm. And like, okay, cool. Let's block out some time, right?
Mhm.
And so that time block is important, developing your systems and putting those things in place where you can sit down and you can just have those like, hey, we need to have this conference call or maybe a sit down
Mhm.
and strategize. Or we got to think through, like, how do we pivot? You have to be able to see ahead of schedule. So you
Mhm.
can't wait. You want to be proactive, not reactive. And so when you're proactive, you're thinking ahead, like what is the worst thing that could happen and how can I pivot from that if it does happen, right? So if I'm reactive, we're already too late. We're in the mix of everything.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that is where, you can like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And that can get the business into trouble really quick if you're talking about business, right?
Right.
But I think partly dealing as well being a paramedic, like, in 30 seconds or 90 seconds, I'm dealing with somebody's life, right? I
Right.
got to be able to pivot quickly. I got to be quick on my feet. And so some of that is self-taught and how do we deal with situations? So I think overall with life and business and the people that I've been around, I think that is like instrumental in how to deal and build relationships very quickly, how to build confidence in what you do when you walk into a room and you are the authoritative figure, you're the expert. I think those are things that are good traits, right? You want to be that. And sometimes you have to learn those traits or the skills in order to become that expert in that room. When I walk into a room and I've walked into courtrooms and stuff before and had to give testimonial and they're like, well, what makes you the expert? I said, I didn't say I was an expert, but do I know a lot? Yeah, probably know enough to walk out of there pretty good.
I think that's key, right? You pointed out a few items there of those skills and those core values that really have helped you along the way. I mean, we've talked a lot about your continuing education, but then being able to open yourself up and just have those conversations, spitball those out, and then planning, right? So being able to focus on long-term strategy and short-term action. And I think that probably comes from some of your training in the Air Force, correct me if I'm wrong, but then also in the medical field. Again, if you're a paramedic, you've probably spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours preparing for those instances, right? So then you are prepared to be able to move forward and be proactive within that situation. If you're dealing with somebody's life and you're trying to help them through the situation or save their life, then you've got to be able to be well trained in that, right? So again, that training, that education keeps coming back to that, being able to continue that education, but then be able to react and be able to plan accordingly. So I think those are super key. A lot of times, especially newer investors, a lot of times get caught up in the mode of just learning everything. And so, have you ever found yourself in that hamster wheel of just learning, or have you been able to get past that learning stage, or what's been able to help you get through that so that you actually get into the action stage? Because people can get hung up in that learning for so long and never do anything.
Yeah, I think you bring up a couple good points there, right? So I think one of the things that you get is like when I first got into sub two, it was like a fire hose of information. Like, oh my, like Pace delivers, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was getting all that information, it's like, oh my God, it's coming like so much. I can't deal with it. Like, oh, it's crazy. And then you got to really like, okay, where do I need to niche down? Where do I need to focus at? And so then you need to narrow that down and bring it into focus, right? So I think you can do that trial by fire hose initially, and
Mhm.
then it's a little overwhelming. Once you get into getting that focus, getting your niche, right? And then you're like, okay, where do I want to be? Where do I want to land?
Mhm.
And where do I want to help others at? Things like that, right? So yeah, for sure, this is one of the things with real estate investing. Everybody's trying to do everything, and we wear a lot of hats initially, right? It's like pick out what avatar you are, or pick out what you're going to be. So it's kind of funny you said that, but I was like, I was a consuming information overload fool, and I took all that in. But at the same time, in day two, we put in 5 LOIs, and I was already taking action. So you have to be able to implement that once you start taking that action in
Mhm.
and then make it work. You have to put it into reality.
As you're talking through that information and being overwhelmed, do you feel that you work well under that pressure of being overwhelmed, which allows you to be able to take that action, just kind of gathering that from you? And again, in the type of work that you've been able to do, the military service, the medical service, those are all high pressure situations, right? And so it shows that you've been able to take that under pressure and then focus that. I love how you said, you have to niche down and be able to focus on what you want to be able to do. And so let's talk about where that niche looks like for you. So as you've come into the investing world and doing this full time now, what does that niche look like for you? And maybe that niche has changed over time. Let's talk through what that focus is for you right now. Where are you focusing your time and your energy?
So I think you bring a good thing, and you got to be able to do. And one of the things that I am strong at is multitask, right? So that's one of the things, like, you got to put on a lot of different hats, right?
Yep.
And then you got to figure out where you want to focus into. But multitasking is a strong skill of mine. So I can do three things at once and not blink of eye. I can make a cold call. I can call a direct to agent. And I can help, navigate. So I had to educate myself as well, right? On like even corporate credit and things like that.
Mhm.
And so, where do you focus at, right? And that can be sometimes a challenge. I think sometimes you need to do the things first,
Mhm.
and then what you like, what you don't like, and then you can automate, you can eliminate, or you can delegate it, right? Or automate, delegate, and then eliminate.
Mhm.
And so I think those three things are good that you take into your business, into your career, into your investing. However, you're going to niche down, whether it's hiring a VA to do your bookkeeping because you don't like doing that, whether it's somebody comping, running the numbers, whether it's underwriting the deal, whether it's talking to the sellers, whether it's closing the deal, dispoing the deal. You're always going to need something, right? And when you scale, you have to nail down and niche what is your expertise, and
Mhm.
then put everybody else around you, and that team will flow.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So you mentioned that you've got to do a lot of different things early on, right? So as early investors, a lot of times you're the one wearing all of the hats. If you build out your org chart in your business, your name is in every one of those positions, right? And so I love how you presented that as you've got to automate, delegate, and eliminate. Eliminate those things that you shouldn't be doing. Coming back to the visionary versus an integrator, eliminate those things that you're not good with, and then delegate the things that have to be done that can be done by somebody else. And then automate those things that you just hate the grind on. If there's some of those things that you can automate. So talk through with me for just a minute. In your current business structure, it sounds like you're still doing a lot of those different things, a lot of wearing those different hats. But what are the things that you're focusing on right now that you're trying to either delegate, partner with somebody on, or eliminate? Let's start with those two things.
This particular setup of this business hasn't really taken and flourished yet.
Mhm.
So I'm working on building out a team, right? I'm working on as well some businesses, and maybe acquiring those businesses, something that has cash flow so that you can buy the real estate, right? Take some depreciation. So I think building those teams, building those strategic partners, networking is one of the biggest things that I'm focused on right now.
Mm.
Networking with either other investors, real estate, and business, and getting focused and really pulling together that team that I want to jump onto.
Mhm.
And so I've got my eye out. I'm kind of like stalking people that I want to jump on their team, right? So I may like, hey, do you need somebody to like take a little bit of everything on, and what can I do? Where can I fit at? I don't know exactly where that is yet, but I think with more repetition,
Mhm.
more reps, I think that'll actually pull me into a team, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm trying to do, is just build the reps out right now, and then I won't ask anybody to do anything I haven't already done. So I'm kind of that person, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the good things about being what I am. Nothing is too small or too
Right.
big.
Yeah, and I think that's super powerful. Again, coming back to early on in your career, early on in building a business, you've got to be able to do all those things, right? And then once you've understood the process, then you can hand it off to other individuals. And building out that team or getting onto a team, as you've done a little bit of everything, what draws you to it? Is it more on the visionary side? Is it more on the integrator side? What are those things that you love to do? And what are the things that you hate to do? Or maybe you don't
Uh,
like nearly as much.
yeah, I'm definitely more of a visionary. I'm more of that think big or go home. I hate the little tedious stuff. I can do some integrator stuff, but man, I don't like it. I already know that. I need those systems. I need those integrated. I need people to build the CRMs
Mm.
and the spreadsheets and everything like that. Can I comp properties? Sure. I don't mind doing that, but I don't really have to do a spreadsheet. I just know the rules, and what I have to apply. And so I think that's some of the things that I'm working on, is that big visionary piece. I really do like.
I think that's so cool to be able to recognize that in yourself, because then as you're networking and building out the team around you or joining a team, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses is absolutely key in being successful, number one, in business, but also in the investing world as well. And so looking at that visionary side, let's shift our focus a little bit. What are those long-term goals that you're trying to build? What does that look like from that visionary side of it? Paint me a picture of what you're wanting to achieve.
Well, I know everybody uses that cliche word. I want financial freedom. I want all that stuff, right? And I do. That's all going to come with time. But I think a large real estate portfolio for my family that I can put into that, whereas it cash flows passively, right? They don't have to worry about, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning picking up, and I got to go to California to see my kids, or go down to, somebody broke a leg, or maybe, and I don't even know yet, maybe it's my grandkids, right? I got to pick up and go. I want that freedom to be able to jump on a plane. So sometimes what I'm kind of doing right now too is jumping on a plane, and I'm going to events. I'm going to meetups. I'm going to show up one day, and they're like, "Where's he from?" And he's from St. Louis, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, that's kind of the nice thing of the freedom that I have now. I retired from my W-2 last year. So real estate and business is kind of my focus, right? And so there's no turning back. There's no getting another W-2 and retiring 3 times. I've seen family members do that. That's not an interest for me. I don't want to be 70 years old. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to, enjoy family. I don't think we were working ourselves to the bone is what we were meant here to be doing. I think we were here to help others. I think we were here to set a legacy for our families. And so that the things that they don't have to worry about anymore. Everybody's got to worry about paying their bills, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want them to have to do that. And so that's what I'm doing this for. That's my why. It's really my family and what I can leave for them, and how to get over that hurdle. And that drives me. Like, it's an inner fuel that you really can't explain. That why has to be powerful. And so when I'm surrounded by other investors, other people that are doing this, and boy, that just drives me.
Mm.
So I just want to do it more. And I'm like, give me the call. I want the call. Let me make the call, next call. And, let me close the deal. Right. I know that's kind of what fuels me. Like, I love being around people, that positive energy. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that positive energy, that mindset that you talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that mindset is almost, I would like, it's everything. It's like dreams, right? Some people just want to win the lottery. Right. But if I know how to fish, and I'm not just given a fish, then guess what? You can take everything away, and I can fish for life.
Yeah.
I don't even have a fishing pole, but I know how to fish.
Yeah.
Right. And so being resourceful, finding the key elements and the key players, and having some knowledge yourself. Right. So that's kind of like building it out. That really brings everything full circle. But man, the fuel of being around people that are like-minded, positive energy, that are looking to do deals, that just have that vision, right? I don't want to work somebody that's a Debbie Downer and things
Yeah.
like that. I'm looking for those other, kind of, it doesn't have to be necessarily an influencer. I think influencers are overrated,
Mm-hmm.
but, some people, like, you need some influence, right? And so
Right.
being around those successful people
Mm-hmm.
that are doing the deals, that are doing the business, that's great. So the funny thing is, I went to North Carolina recently, this past weekend, and I met with some of the big players that are helping do these mergers and acquisitions, and real estate attorneys and CPAs and things like that, right? How do you use your retirement accounts?
Mm.
And so that taught me, like, oh, how do I grow this, right? How do I get this to that next level? Peter Thiel was one of the ones that had a $6 billion Roth IRA. When he did that, he did it tax-free. I think he was one of the investors in PayPal, and he invested early on in
Mm-hmm.
Facebook and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to pass a law, and it was the Peter Thiel law, and
Yeah.
that you can't grow that Roth IRA and have $6 billion tax-free. Well, it failed, but anyway, and I don't know much about it. I know the story, and it's just amazing, like what you can do because of your knowledge
Yeah,
and what he did because nobody taught him that. He learned it, right?
right.
And so that's a skill that you have to acquire.
Mhm.
And so some of those skills, some of those education, that network, that's how you get your net worth because your network is your net worth.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so much there, right? And I can see that your motivation, your long-term vision, that motivation, that why. Again, a lot of people talk about, oh, well, I want to be rich. Well, that rich or being wealthy is completely different for every individual, and I love that you said, you want to be able to have the legacy to be able to provide for your family and provide for the generations to come aside from just having the money aspect of it, right? Something that's even more powerful is your time and your flexibility and being able to have the freedom of that flexibility, the freedom of being able to go anywhere, and you don't have to be tied down to a location. So again, I think those are things that drive a lot of people, and especially the investors like yourself that are moving forward at a rate that is going to be building that legacy long term. I love that you said you retired from your W-2 and you're looking at building businesses and buying businesses as part of your long term goal. Because most people, when they think about retiring, they're going to go sit on a beach somewhere and drink margaritas and do nothing. Or they're going to be so old and broken that they are not going to be able to do anything. And so I think that's such a powerful way to be able to tie this together and be able to show that vision and being able to be that example. You talk about being an influencer. Well, an influencer is just somebody that can communicate in a way that is showing others what's possible, right? And I think that's one thing that you see with the Pace Morby aspect of things is he shows people how things can be done, and he uses that in a positive way. And being around people like yourself that have that positive motivation, that positive desire, you hit the nail right on the head when you said you want to be around those positive people, right? You don't want to be around Debbie Downers because those people are just going to be a cancer to what you're trying to achieve. And that greatness that you're striving for, that greatness that you're going toward is going to be contagious to those people around you, right? Even me just talking with you about it tonight, it's just powerful how you can motivate other people and bring them into that and show them what's possible. And I love that you mentioned that it being dropped into the middle of nowhere with your knowledge is more powerful than what's in your wallet. And being able to take that, and if you know how to do something versus just being given something, is now you're able to move into that next stage and be able to move further forward down to your career. So long-term goals is you're looking to build that long-term wealth and build that real estate portfolio and looking at businesses. Let's focus on the business side of things for a minute. What are some of the businesses that you're looking at or looking to build or looking to acquire? What does that focus look like for you?
That's a great question, and so I'm trying to really get focused on a lot of service-based businesses that I guess that provide more of that relationship that you're building with your customer base, because then that's a repeat business, right? I don't want a one-off product or anything like that I'm going to sell off the shelf. I don't want it too niche down of an industry that there's only 5 people going to show up and there's only 5 people in the world that are going to do it. I want everybody to have an Apple Watch, Microsoft computer, things like that, right?
Mhm.
And it may not be to that extent, but in my local sphere, my local community, I want them to know which business I bring by marketing and bring the value to them, and maybe even doing some value adds, right? So lately I've been looking at some HVAC businesses. I wouldn't mind getting into some electrical business as well, maybe do some value adds there. Um, and the funny thing is, listen to Ben, which is Pace's CFO. That's like pretty cool that we have just so many resources at our disposal. Pace doesn't like to say he's an influencer, but he does like to take action, and he shows you like,
Yes.
hey, this is what's possible if you take action, right?
Yes.
Abraham, one of the others in the community, if you take action, you can have all these businesses, and you don't necessarily need to work for the businesses as a W-2. They can work for you, your time. You said was valuable. My time is valuable. But
Mhm.
being rich is you have the money, and being wealthy is you have the freedom, right?
Yes.
And so that freedom to pick up and go and do other things, I think is kind of what drives me. That
Mhm.
freedom of being rich, like, yeah, but being rich to somebody might be $1,000 a week, right? Another person, it might be 10,000. It depends on what your budget. You may have a $3 million plane and it's costing you $300,000 a month to keep maintained. So I think like
Yeah.
it's all a perspective, right?
Yeah.
Where are you at? And I think we're all rich to some extent, but I think when you get wealthy, then your family and you, that's that next level. It's an energy, it's a focus, and it's your why. It's how do you get to that why? And I think that's what drives me too.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful to be able to, again, focus on that why and focus on how can you help. You've mentioned that several times. You want to be able to help others. And I think that really shows in the businesses that you are looking at acquiring and building is there's service-based businesses. You're looking at building those relationships with people around you and allowing that business to be that extension of your core values of being able to help others out. It goes back to your early years of doing the HVAC and the electrical service. You mentioned being able to do some of this work for some of these elderly people. They may not have a lot of money. You had some time. You're going to be able to go in and provide them a service, right? And being able to give out to the universe. You hear a lot of times and you see it coming back. You experience that as you provide to the universe will provide back to you. You get back what you put in. And a lot of times you get back tenfold what you put in. And so being able to have those service businesses is such a powerful way for people to be able to build out their personal influence. As you build out your brand and your influence, that comes across in a positive way. And if you can do that time and time again within these various different services, again, look at the positive influence you're going to have to your local community, right? You didn't mention that you wanted to be famous to everybody in the world, but your local area that you're providing these businesses. And now you may have local businesses in a couple different states at some point, right? But being able to be focused on those local areas and those local area needs. And I think sometimes we get so caught up as investors, we get so caught up in trying to chase that dollar. I've been on paths where it's like, I got to focus on this and this is the number, but you've never told me a number. You're looking at what am I going to be able to do? What is that service? What is that help that I'm going to be able to do and then provide to other people? And I think that resonates with a lot of other investors, especially as you start building out your network. Those people are going to come to you and you're going to find more and more of that. And I'm seeing that even more myself in my journey as well. And so I think that is super amazing, Chris. And I want to just take a moment here and let you tell the audience that's watching how they can reach out to you. What's the best way to contact you? Is it through a social media platform? Is it through an email? What do you feel is the easiest way to get a hold of you if they want to be part of your journey and be part of your team?
Yeah, I think right now they can hit me up on Instagram, Chris.Wahoski, Wahoski. Just hit me up there. That's usually where I go to a lot now. I'm kind of like into the new Instagram world and things like that, but I'm getting very good and versed at it. I'm starting to build some stuff on YouTube as well. So you can just YouTube my name as well. Yeah, if you want to connect and you want to learn some stuff, I'll teach you some skills, right? I'm learning. We're all students, and so we can build together. I definitely, if I don't know it, I know who I can go to get some answers for sure.
That's awesome. I think coming back to that, who you are, right? Putting yourself out there and being willing to help other people out. So, on the flip side, Chris, what are the things that you need right now? What is something that you're looking for that you might need help with right now that somebody could help you with?
Well, I think getting on a team, and actually, I'm looking for an integrator right now to build on what we're doing in the investment world. And then we'll start adding big players. We're looking at fractional CFO that can help analyze some businesses and things like that. Pretty good at doing it, but always willing to learn some new tricks of the trade. I'll surround myself by those experts that know more than me, right? And I'm going to stay in my lane. And so if I stay in mine, then they'll come and we're all going to go on a journey together and it's going to take us to good places, new places.
Awesome. I think that's amazing, Chris. And I think that as you work on that path to find that integrator, I think you're going to be able to find somebody that is drawn to you because of your powerful why and the personality that you have. Again, obviously, your core values show through how strong of an individual you are and how focused and how motivated you are. Again, that continual education is obviously showing you the path to go, right? So I just want to wrap up with guidance that you can provide to the community. And you talked a little bit about some books that you've listened to or read along your journey, but what would be something that you would recommend to investors, whether they're just starting out or maybe they're a seasoned investor? What's something that you would recommend that they could use to be able to help get them to the next level that you feel has helped you along the way?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm actually looking at right now and kind of growing, if you're just starting out, you're trying to grind and things like that, you're trying to figure out what to get as far as some books or something like that. Like, how do we do some sales? How do we, talk to people? How do we pitch something? So one of the things that I've recently started reading is Oren Klaff, Klaff. It's called Pitch Anything. It's an innovation method. How do you persuade? And then he's got another book called Flip the Script. So if you're trying to get into sales and you're trying to make your next move, you're grinding, you're starting from the beginning, but you got to kind of wear all those hats. You need something to come in, right?
Mhm.
So you got to learn how to talk to people. And so those are two books that right now that I'm actually doing some research and looking at and reading. But if you like the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, Robert Kiyosaki, excellent. I like the four quadrants, how to get out of the W-2. What one do you want to be in? Do you want to be the entrepreneur? Do you want to be the investor? Do you want to be the bank, or do you want to be the one that's being owned by the banks? Interest rates are going up right now. They ain't getting any cheaper.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
So but the value of houses and rents, they've gone up since like 1914. They've not gone back, right? They're not getting any cheaper. So I think this is a great avenue, and the wealthy get rich because they're usually into real estate. They may have businesses, but businesses come and go. What do you like to do? And then dig deep and educate yourself. And it doesn't matter necessarily if it's those two books or three books, whatever. Just get a book, read a book. How do we get better? And so I think as long as we're of the trades, we're our own student, then I think we continue to grow and you just flourish. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, man. That was such a powerful way, such an amazing message that we've heard today. And thank you for sharing those books with us. I'll put them down in the show notes. So if others want to look at those, they can look those books up as well. So again, I thank you for sharing your time with me tonight. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience with me tonight. And I appreciate you joining with me. And with that, we'll say good night.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jeremy. I appreciate everything.